How to play fingerstyle or fingerpicking guitar, lesson 29. We're Going to Be Friends by White Stripes. And this is part 3 of a 3-part collection within the guitar course. So going from lesson 27 to this lesson, we've been looking at 2-finger fingerpicking patterns. If you haven't seen either of those videos, I'll put the link to both of them down below in the description. And as this is part of a complete fingerstyle guitar course, I'll also put a link to the full playlist down below in the description as well, in case you need to go from the beginning. And it's well worth going from the beginning if you want to learn how to play the guitar correctly. Right, I'll just introduce the song to anyone who's not heard it. However, I'm not going to actually play it in this video because I'll be done for copyright. However, here's a bit of the video just so you can watch his fingers. And hopefully you'll notice that he's just using the primary finger, which is the thumb, and the index finger. You'll also notice he's resting the other fingers on the guitar itself in order to steady his hand and help him locate the strings without looking at the guitar. And with his other hand, he's also making chord shapes, even where he plays only partial chords. If you haven't heard this song, it's worth doing so. So I've put the link to it down below in the description with all the other links. Or you could do a search for We're Going to Be Friends by White Stripes on your favourite music platform. And even if you don't like White Stripes, this is a really nice tune in the fact that it's not overproduced and it's got a really good basic homegrown feel to it, which I think is quite endearing. However, I haven't chosen this tune because of that. I chose it because it demonstrated the right technique at the right time in the course. Right, let's get started with the lesson. How to play We're Going to Be Friends by White Stripes. To learn this, you'll probably need the tab, so I'll tell you how you can get that for free at the end of the lesson. When you first look at this tab, it looks like there's an awful lot there. But there's a lot of very near repeats where there's just slight changes to what he's doing. And you can basically break it down into an introduction, 3 verses, verse 1, 2, and 3, a bridge, and a final verse or an outro. So you can identify these different sections more easily. There's a double line at the end of each section. And if you look at the double lines, you'll notice there's no repeats throughout the whole song. And there's only a few chords in it, which I've marked above the tab. So let's just have a look at the chords first. On the first page, there's 4 chords: G, C, D, and C add 9. And on the second page, we've got a couple of additional chords in G6 and A, or A major. Most of the time, you're only actually playing part of the chord. So the fingers you don't need to put in place, I've marked as grey ones rather than black. However, if you can, it's a good idea to play all the fingers anyway, so you get more and more into the habit of going for the chords, and hopefully they'll also speed up. Something you'll notice as we go through this tune is that there's a kind of randomness to the finger picking. So whilst the fingers remain the same, primary, index, the strings you're plucking change sort of randomly. You'll see what I mean as we go through the tune. So to get started, let's do the first line, which really is the equivalent of the intro and part of the verse. Here it is, just to listen to the first time, very slowly at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction, and it's 4/4 time. Notice that the notes being played with the primary finger are played on the beat, and the notes being played with the index finger are being played off the beat. Here it is, a little closer to full speed at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Listen to it first, or if you think you're ready, you can play along. If you think you need to, pause the video here and just practice that little bit just to get used to the style of play. Otherwise, here it is again at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along with it if you think you can. Rather than moving on and doing the whole of the second line, what we'll do is we'll just extend what we've done and play the first line and the first half of the second line. And the reason for this is it introduces the change to the C. So we're playing the G, changing to the C and returning to the G. Here that is being played with a 2-bar introduction at 90 beats per minute. Before we get too far into the tune, I'd like to discuss chord fingering flexibility. And this is because this tune demonstrates it very well. Now, when you first start to learn the guitar, you'll be given chords and told they should be fingered in a very specific way. However, this isn't actually true when you get into practical guitar playing, because you should really be looking for the changes with the smallest amount of movement, so you can create smoother flowing chord changes. With the first 6 bars we've just played, it makes far more sense to play the partial G using the second and third finger rather than the first and second finger. And this is because it's part of the C shape, and therefore it's far easier to move between the partial G and the C if I continue playing with the second and third finger. However, later in the tune, we play a D major, a C add 9 and the partial G. And in that instance, it's far more practical to use the first and second finger to play the partial G. And that's just because of the way the chords lead one from another. So you'll notice as I'm playing this tune, I'll use both fingerings for the partial G chord. As you practice the tune, you can try both ways of fingering the partial G, and you'll discover where they have their advantages and disadvantages. Right, here's the first 6 bars again at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along if you think you can. Here that is one last time before we move on. Right, let's take a look at the 7th and the 8th bar. In the 7th bar, we go between the D and the C add 9. And you'll notice between those two chords, we don't have to remove the 3rd finger, which remains on the 3rd fret of the B string. You just move the 2nd finger if you're playing partial chords, or the 1st and 2nd finger if you're playing complete chords. And when you go from the 7th bar to the 8th bar, between the C add 9 and the partial G, you either just move that 2nd finger from the 3rd fret of the A string to the 3rd fret of the E string, or if you form the shape for the C add 9, you remove that complete shape with the 1st and 2nd finger and bring that down to the bottom 2 strings. Here's just those 3 chords with my fretting hand so you can see how that movement works. D major, C add 9, partial G. And here's that again. D major, C add 9, partial G. Here's bar 7 and 8 with the finger picking at a slow 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is again at 80 beats per minute. Now, if you look at bar 9 and 10 and compare it with bar 7 and 8, the chords are identical, but there are very slight changes in the finger picking pattern. Here's bars 9 and 10 being played at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is again, in case you want to try and play along. Right, let's try bringing together those last 2 sections from bar 7 to 10 with a 2-bar introduction, again slowly at 80 beats per minute. Right, I'll play that again once more at 80 beats per minute before I speed it up to 90 beats per minute. So here it is with a 2-bar introduction. Right, here's bars 7 to 10, speeded up slightly to 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try and play along with it if you think you're ready. And here that is again at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Now we've covered everything we need to know to get us down to the end of the first verse, which is the second set of double lines. So here that is slowly at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Don't worry if you can't play along with it yet. You will get it with a little bit of practice. But if you are playing along with it, here it is again at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Here's that first section again, slightly faster at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. If you can, try and play along with it. Here that is, one last time at 90 beats per minute before we move on to the next verse. In terms of the chords you're playing, the second verse is identical to the first verse. And you also play exactly the same notes with the primary finger, and these are the bass notes. However, the difference between the first verse and the second verse is in the notes you play with the index finger, which sometimes are reversed and sometimes are completely different notes. So you could get away with just playing the first verse again if you wanted to. You just omit the introduction. And because of this, I'm not going to go through the second verse line by line. Rather, I'll play through the whole thing in case you want to try and play along with it. And I'll start at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. So here it is. Here that is again, at the same speed, 80 beats per minute. And we'll play that one last time, but this time at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Now we're up to verse 3, which has a similar structure to verse 1 and 2, and very similar finger picking. However, there's one chord that's changed, but the change is very slight. And we introduce a G6 at this stage in the song. And the G6 is introduced in the phrase where we go from the D to the C9, and this time we go to the G6. However, if we take a closer look at the chords in that section, you play the D with the third finger on the 3rd fret of the B string, and then we move across to the C9 where that 3rd finger remains in place, and then finally we move over to the G6 and that 3rd finger just stays in place on the 3rd fret of the B string. So it's creating what's called a drone note. Let's see that again. Firstly the D, then we move to the C add 9, leaving the 3rd finger in place, and then we move to the G6, leaving that 3rd finger in place again. Right, let's play the passage where that chord first comes into play. So we'll play the last 3 bars of verse 3. And I'll play that through at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here that is again at the same speed with a 2-bar introduction. Let's try and bring the 3rd verse together then with a 2-bar introduction at 80 beats per minute. And here's verse 3 again, slightly faster at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Right, let's move on to the next section, which is verse 4 and the bridge. And this section starts with the G6, which has been carried over from the end of verse 3. This section is very much a repeat of what you've done in the 1st, 2nd and 3rd verse. And through most of it, you'll use exactly the same chords. However, there's an A major chord in this section, that this is the only place it's used. But whilst we've got a change of chords, the finger picking pattern remains exactly the same, so there's nothing complicated going on. So you can hear how it should sound Here's the verse 4 bridge section being played at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. In this section of the tune, it becomes far more obvious where he's dropping notes to help make the chord changes more fluent. Now, I have mentioned this technique in previous songs in the fingerstyle guitar course. However, in this particular song, it's quite prominent. And not only is it a technique for getting between the chords, but it also adds an extra element to the song. You can see here where I've marked the notes he's dropped that previously he was playing a chord and he's released the note early in order to get his fingers ready for the next chord. Now, if when you're playing these passages you think of the notes that way, that you're dropping the note in order to start the chord change, it makes the whole tune easier to play. Here's that verse 4 bridge section being played again at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Try to play along with it if you think you're ready. If you think you're ready and you want to try and speed it up slightly, here it is again at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Right, let's move on to the last section so we can then bring the whole tune together. Now, there's nothing new in this last section that we haven't already played in the previous sections, apart from the very last chord. And hopefully you've noticed the wavy line alongside the chord. And what this means is the chord is raked. And that means we don't strum it quickly. We strum it slowly so you can hear each individual note, but not very slowly, just enough that you can hear a breakdown of the chord. I'll play this last section at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction so you can hear how it should sound. And here that is again at 80 beats per minute again, so you can play along with it if you think you're ready. Right, here's that section at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. Now, I don't expect many people will be able to play the song from start to finish after doing just this tutorial. So I'll put some metronome beats at the end of the tutorial so you can practice with them if you need to. However, here's the complete song being played at 80 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. And here's the complete song again, but this time at 90 beats per minute with a 2-bar introduction. At the end of this video, I've put the metronome beats so you can practice what you've learnt, and they're at 80 beats per minute, 90 beats per minute and 99 beats per minute. If you've just discovered this channel or these lessons, it would be worth you doing the complete fingerstyle guitar course. And to help you find the correct lessons, I've created a playlist and I've put the link to that playlist down below in the description. I've also put another link to a video explaining how you can get the complete fingerstyle guitar course PDF ebook completely free. You can also find the complete fingerpicking course and many other courses and lessons at www.ebooks4guitar.com. And if you are new to this channel and if you haven't subscribed, please do like, subscribe and hit the bell icon, and then you'll be notified when I upload new videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you come back again soon.